I'll put it on in the morning, and by like afternoon or evening, like when I go play volleyball or something, I'm like, oh my God, I stink already again. So be sure to reapply that shit. She says, oh, yeah, reapply.
That's what I've heard about the all natural ones. I'm like, I don't even try it because I would be so bad at reapplying it.
Yeah, it does not work for me.
No, there's no way.
I'm really trying. I love Native. It smells really good, but it doesn't last very long. So like already right now, I'm like, I can smell it. So you have to keep reapplying. But all right, let's get into this. I will share my screen. I'm going to be calling myself out a lot for this one, by the way, because I'm a caffeine junkie in a way. So calling myself out for a lot of shit that I'm going to talk about. All right, can you guys see my screen? Are you a caffeine junkie, doc notes and all that stuff? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, Sam, why'd you shake your head now?
At one point, there wasn't anything.
Okay. You're like the only person I can see. So you were like, I was like, what? How do you not? Okay. All right. Let's dive into this. If you guys ever have any questions or I don't see like a hand raised like in feature or anything, just go ahead and just blurb and over talk me so I can like know that you want to say something. So are you a caffeine junkie? And I'm sure a lot of you are going to be feeling some type of way about this too. I am myself, but we really have to talk about this. So it is a natural stimulant, and stimulant as in making things move. It is not a depressant like alcohol is. Depressants, you know, tone us down. Stimulants pipe us up. It's commonly found in tea, coffee, and cacao. I'm going to say cacao. Not really sure how to pronounce that, but cacao plants. It works by stimulating the brain and the central nervous system, helping you stay alert and prevent the onset of tiredness. Actually, the first brewed tea using caffeine was dated back to as far as 2737 BC. I just thought that was interesting. Like, this shit's been around for a long time. Again, it's in tea, coffee, and chocolate. So that is where chocolate comes from, the cacao plants, if you're wondering where that comes from. It binds to our adenosine receptors, resulting in reduced pain and effort perception, as well as enhanced neuromuscular function. And I'll talk about these points a little bit later, how it impacts our reduced pain and effort perception as it correlates to our training. It is the most widely used and abused psychoactive stimulant in the world. I bet that. I believe that. It's the second most traded commodity on the planet after oil. Consumption of caffeine represents one of the largest and longest unsupervised drug studies ever conducted on the human race, and perhaps that's not revitalized, but is in conjunction with alcohol, which continues this day. So both of those, alcohol and caffeine, have been studied for so long. That's a typo there. But ongoing studies for these two drugs, essentially. So coffee is a branch off of caffeine, obviously. It appears to have no benefit or a slight benefit to our cancer rates, death from cardiovascular disease, metabolism, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, which is your body's inability to process or I guess stimulate from like blood sugar. So if you are insulin resistive, you're not going to be as, I don't even know how to say this. I'm like drawing a blank here. So if you're taking in like a carbohydrate source, your body's not going to respond to it as best as if you were insulin, the opposite of that. Oh my gosh, I'm doing such a blank here, probably from caffeine. But insulin resistive is you're not going to respond as well to carbohydrate intakes. Neurological conditions, depression, or sleep. And I'm putting arguably here because I'm going to dive into this a lot more. For those that have been with me for a while, you know, I talk about sleep a lot. So again, here I'm going to talk about sleep. When it says it might have no benefit or slight benefit to sleep, I'm going to disagree with that. Anyways, no effect or slightly detrimental for cholesterol levels, your blood pressure, digestive conditions such as ulcers, heartburn, indigestion, bone health, fertility, and pregnancy complications. So it can impact that, or it has been shown to have no effect. But if some of you have experienced ulcers, maybe you don't know you have it, or heartburn, you know, when you're taking in alcohol or sometimes a lot of caffeine, you get that heartburn coming up. So you might even feel that yourself. If not, then you probably don't have any issues. So and I found this quote from this article here. It says, caffeine ruins your ability to estimate perceived rates of exertion. So this is where I'm going to talk about how it impacts your training. So good and bad. If we're having caffeine prior to our workout, that is very good for getting us into that state of being aroused. Like we're into the workout, our intensity's up, we're feeling good. We have that false sense of energy. But at the same time, this is very beneficial for workouts, right? We're in that state where we need to be for a workout, where we're very responsive. But it can also impact our ability to rate our exertion. So if you've ever had, and I remember when I first took pre-workout ever, and it was like the pre-workout powders. I took it and I could not like slow down. I could not stop working out. My workout went way too freaking long. And this tends to happen when I have too much caffeine as well. And the one time I took Adderall. I just worked out for forever. So don't recommend that. Don't do that. But I just couldn't stop working out. It was like, oh, I want to do this thing. Oh, I want to do this. You don't ever tap into that fatigue because caffeine can limit that, or whatever is in your pre-workout mixture, that can limit that as well too, to keep your stamina going longer and longer. So if you are doing your workouts based off that RPE scale, and for most of you, I want you to be going in between that 6 to 7, maybe even 8 range of that perceived exertion. I don't want you to have a 10 out of 10, right? That means you're like crawling back home. I don't want you to feel that for your workouts. But when we're in that sweet spot of 6 to 8, if we're having a lot of caffeine, this can kind of throw off our estimate of our perceived rate of exertion. Maybe you're actually working a lot harder, and caffeine has impacted that, or maybe probably not. Most likely you're not working hard enough. That's not true. You're probably gonna be working harder because you have caffeine. So that is just a potential downside that could impact your training session, making you work a little bit too hard, and that will impact our rate of recovery. That will impact our progress. If you did a workout or consistently work out this way, you can have some drawbacks to that. So be very mindful of that, but I am going to say this could be more involved with like how much you're consuming. So if you're consuming over a certain threshold, I think this would fall more into that category, that it would start to impede, I guess, not benefit to our training session. But for the most part, if you're having caffeine, I highly encourage you to have it before your workout rather than after, because if you're taking it after, and that depends on some of you that work out in the mornings. Working out in the mornings before or even after your workout is good, but for us that are working out in the evenings or maybe mid-afternoon, having it after your workout is kind of counterintuitive, because you're kind of putting your body in that state of fight or flight, where we're going to have a better workout when we're drinking caffeine, which is after a workout. So if we're getting that same stimulation after a workout, that's kind of like defeats the purpose of using it. If we don't want to stay in that prolonged state of being heightened. Caffeine can also be an irritant to our stomach or GI, and this is coupled. Don't just think of this as alone, but this can also occur with stress, alcohol, NSAIDs. So ibuprofen that you're taking, maybe you're having a lot of pain and you are taking a lot of NSAIDs. And many other things can cause ulcers, not strictly just caffeine. So if you're thinking it's caffeine, you could also do a removal test yourself and see if that is the culprit to it, or is it the other factors here, stress from maybe work stress, just your general life stress in general, training stress as well. How much are you drinking alcohol, things like that. And if you guys didn't see my post today about alcohol, you should go check it out. It took me so long to create that infographic, which people said they wanted an infographic. So I was like, all right, I'll do these like once a week. And it took me so long and a lot of time, but I'd appreciate if you guys looked at that. Beneficial for you all too. Anyways, so these irritants can also lead to decreased production of stomach acid, which we need a good level, right? We need not too much and not too low. And I pulled this from this book here. These are the sources that I use too. Healthy Gut, Healthy You. So if you guys ever want more books to read about any of this stuff, I got you covered. I got you covered more than I really like even dive through all these. So as you can see, I am only right here out of this book. not all the way through it yet, and this kind of is for about every single book that I have. Don't really ever finish them all, just kind of like working in them. But this one and this one I use. So the Paleo Cure, it is less about the paleo diet. Like, don't let the title fool you. This was highly recommended to me by James. He's been on here before. I consider him like my health mentor, and he's also like my movement therapist, but less about the Paleo Cure, more about like lifestyle factors, and kind of all-inclusive nutrition and everything else. Just really good book for a good idea of what I talk about most of the time. And this one, highly, highly recommend, Why We Sleep. This dives into everything about sleep, things that impact our sleep, things that have been going on for years and years and years. This is a huge, highly recommend this for everybody as well. And this I did read all the way through. I couldn't put it down. So I think I'm gonna let somebody in. Jubilee's in here. So highly recommend those books if you guys have, like, if you want more like information on some of the things I talk about. These books is where most of it comes from. So going to talk more on sleep here, which I told you I'm a biggie about. So caffeine can mute the signal of sleep by blocking adenosine. And that is that chemical I told you about. That is what we will call sleep pressure. So as soon as you wake up, this chemical will increase throughout the day, kind of impacting our sleep. Somebody's, Jubilee, I'm going to mute you. There we go. So anyways, as soon as you wake up, this starts to increase, kind of helping us get into our sleep cycles. And if we couple that with our natural circadian rhythm, rising and falling with the sun, we have this component here that is just continuing to build up that sleep pressure, which you will feel mostly in the evenings. You feel this pressure when you're like, oh, I'm just kind of tired. That is this chemical that is built up. And what caffeine does is it blocks it and inactivates it. So it goes onto a receptor so that adenosine, so say this is a receptor, caffeine slaps onto here. Adenosine still continues to compile up minute after minute that you're awake, but it just gets right here, right? Because caffeine is like masking over top of it. Caffeine tricks you to feeling alert and awake despite like the high levels of this chemical just building up, right? Because you're still awake, even though you took caffeine here, you're still awake. So what happens when you feel that caffeine crash is when caffeine wears off and all that adenosine is like had been built up and it just onto that site. So that's where you feel that huge, like, I would say caffeine drop or caffeine crash is basically that wall coming down that caffeine had been put up and all that adenosine is built up and just onto that cell. So, and that's the big thing too, though, what you take away from this is that caffeine tricks you into feeling alert. You're not actually more alert or awake despite like those high levels that would otherwise seduce you into sleep. The biggie here though is caffeine has a half-life, which half-life means only half of it is removed from our system for 5 to 7 hours. So this is where it becomes a problem when people have that afternoon caffeine, that afternoon cup of coffee, or even my people that work out in the evenings are taking some pre-workout. If it is a stimulant, that's going to be very impactful to your sleep, right? Because we're only removing half of it 5 to 7 hours later after we ingest it, which is huge. Caffeine is removed from your system by an enzyme within your liver, and there seems to be a genetic trait that one can rapidly clear caffeine from your system without sleep being impacted. But again, how do you really know if you have that trait? A lot of people say caffeine doesn't impact them, but then again, we're seeing their health decline and their sleep get shittier and shittier, and they don't really correlate that with their sleep either. Aging also alters the speed that our caffeine can be cleared out from our system, and that tends to make us more sensitive as we go later on in life. So if you notice a lot of your elderly, maybe your grandparents, they probably still have their morning joes, but they might have switched to decaf. Or heck, maybe they could be the ones that drink coffee all day. I don't know what your grandparents are like, but based off of research is that we have like a less ability to clear it out of our system. I already talked about that caffeine crash. And this is an image that I pulled from the Why We Sleep book, which I thought when I first read this book, I thought this was very impactful for me. So basically they studied how spiders built their webs when they were under the influence of these different drugs. So here's caffeine, here's marijuana, LSD, speed, and this is just a normal spider. So if you just see like how the spider went to build this web off of caffeine, That looks pretty fucked up. Like they didn't even get all the way around. With speed, like, okay, they got majority around, but like if you just look at the rate of how that spider was building their web off of caffeine, like compared to normal, it's like, wow, I didn't even realize that. Now, this is a spider, right? It's not a human. We're kind of completely different than spiders, but I think that's just some good food for thought of maybe we think that we're, you know, very focused on our work with taking caffeine and we're like in this like really good state, but maybe we're very sidetracked and we don't realize it. Maybe we're like over here with a thought and then like, oh yeah, I got this idea. And I am like, whoop, that's me 100% to a T. I will get on these, like, I'm on this, I'm over here. And even on my to-do list, I'll hop, skip around. So I can kind of understand that. No, I'm not building a web, but I get that. LSD, that's just kind of like, it was almost like the spider's like, do. I don't know, that's funny. Anyways, 5 factors that change how we sleep. So of course, I'm gonna end with talking about sleep, of the ways that it impacts our sleep. So LED lights. So getting on your phones at night, you're scrolling through, I'm gonna even say like lights like this impact your sleep. If you're somebody that's like, I need to sleep with the TV on, I'm gonna call bullshit on that. Maybe it's just the sound that you like, but the light is what's impacting your sleep. So getting a noise reducer, I got one off of Amazon, maybe it was 20 bucks. It has been the best like game changer for sleep. It basically sounds like a fan is on, so I have that, and I also have a fan on, and that has helped with sleep so much. But reducing your lights prior to bedtime, getting LED like glasses, blockers, if you're someone that works late at night, maybe you're on your phone scrolling, whatever, just put those glasses on to help minimize the effect that it impacts your sleep. Caffeine, I would try to shut that out no later than 2 p.m. Having your last like little bit of coffee or whatever. This is supposed to be regularized body temperature. So I've talked about in previous office hours before about, you know, sleep, how we get better sleep. And essentially our body temperature needs to drop in order to induce sleep. So if you're somebody that has ever wondered, you know, why do I stick my arm outside of the pillow? Or why do I have my 1 foot outside the blanket? It's just a natural response for your body to try to lower your body temperature so you can go into sleep. So you're gonna put a limb out to try to cool your body. Alcohol negatively impacts our sleep as well. Again, go back to my post that I shared today talking about alcohol. And last but not least, the legacy of punching time cards. So most of you might not think about this, but that's what I got from this book as well. But the pulling people who are night owls into 9-to-5ers, like that doesn't work for them. People who just can't wake up early, that's not their thing. They're being forced to wake up early to get to work. Maybe they have 2-hour commutes, like whatever it is. This is a big one for people having to be put into this system of work start times and end times. So what's the good bean juice? So what's good about it? It's anti-inflammatory, cardiovascular protective. It can increase your metabolism rate. Bowel movements, if somebody is struggling, if you're constipated or struggling with some bowel movements, this can definitely be a thing, but just be mindful of if you're only ever having bowel movements after you drink coffee or whatever your like caffeine fix is, that would be something to look at why are you not naturally having bowel movements? Why does it take a stimulant in order for it to happen? So be mindful of that as well. I'm gonna put like an asterisk there. Athletic performance, it can improve your effort perception, which this doesn't even make sense because the other research said it can alter your perception. Whatever. I guess maybe what it's trying to say, if I'm going to like analyze this, is it can improve your effort perception. Maybe it makes you think you're working harder than you are. I don't know. Aids in neuromuscular function, which is also beneficial in Parkinson's. So if you know within your family that that is, you know, something that strings along, it is shown to improve that, or at least prevent that from occurring, or prevent the rate that it does occur or damage. It improves your muscular strength and muscular endurance. And according to a recent study, helps improve your ability to recover from a hard workout. Which again, I pull all of this information from research articles, and this one is now counteracting the other one. Because the other article said that, scrolling up. The other article said that it can change your rate of perceived exertion in that, or this article here, yeah, I click it later, but it says it can ruin your ability to estimate perceived exertion rates. And it said that that can impact your recovery because you can be working super, super hard and not able to recover from it. So here we have conflicting research, y'all. I'm just bringing to you what I found. So all things considered, if you have suspected GI issues, then caffeine can be harmful. Go ahead and remove it, or at least limit some of it. If you think you have suspected GI issues, then yeah, it's going to be an issue for you. Like I said, if you have heartburn and you notice that when you drink coffee, it gets worse, get rid of coffee. I mean, simple. If you lack management of stress, caffeine can be harmful. I'll talk into that a little bit later. If you are highly dependent on it, reduce it. And this is where I'm going to call myself out. I tried to imagine, what if I didn't have coffee every day? And I can't imagine it. So this is why I'm highly dependent on it. So if any of y'all are with me on trying to reduce it, let's do this. But I'm going to say it's going to be really hard for me. Really hard. I love coffee so much. So I'm calling my own bullshit out. If I'm highly dependent on it, well, I just got to reduce it. It's time. It's time. I got to do it. Different people have different tolerances. So some of you might be good and you feel it off of, let's say, 80 milligrams of caffeine, where other people, like myself, I don't feel very much effect from 80 milligrams. Depending on the type though, if it is like, if you're comparing Red Bull to coffee, like I'll feel energy drinks a little bit differently than I will feel coffee. And they both have different milligrams of caffeine, which I'll talk about a little bit down here and show you, but different people have different tolerances. Timing of your caffeine intake matters. Like I said, try to limit before 2 p.m. at the latest, because we know the half-life is 5 to 7 hours. Your caffeine intake selection, Starbucks versus your at-home, if we're comparing those, they're very different. Energy drinks versus coffee and tea, very different. Decaf versus espresso, very different. And you know how caffeine can sneak into your chocolate desserts and weight loss pills, which hopefully none of you are freaking on weight loss pills. If you are, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. Just don't be on them. So how much is too much? Well, the average person's caffeine consumption is around 200 milligrams a day. Mayo Clinic advises not exceeding 500 to 600. And that just blows my mind. Like, you should not be having this much. I don't really even think I get near that. And I think I drink a lot of caffeine, but that's outrageous. Like, no. I would recommend not exceeding 200, like keep 200. So think of like this in your mind, 2 p.m., like no later than 2 p.m., no more than 200 milligrams. Overconsumption can lead to tolerance, and you need more and more and more to get a desired effect. So this is kind of how it looks in regards to like looking at the different types. An espresso shot, so this is something I recently learned, it doesn't have as much caffeine in it as, say, like your home brewed. So that's 95 milligrams, this is 64, but the rate at which it gets into your system is faster compared to like a regular brewed coffee. So if you're wondering why espresso shot versus something else, that's the trick. Less caffeine and gets into your system faster. Coke or any like caffeinated beverage like soda, whatever, that has about 30 to 40 milligrams. Cold brew has more caffeine than your standard coffee. And then we can level it up more with nitro cold brew. You just have one of those. And I don't have serving sizes for this because I didn't really get good information on like what serving size has that much, because I feel like most places have different amounts. But generally this is just, let's say they're medium or whatever size drink would have this much. Spark, if you're somebody who's big on Advocare, or maybe you were, that has 120 milligrams. Sugar-free Red Bull in that small can has 80. So even less than your standard like homebrewed coffee too. Homebrewed coffee is around 100. Monster Energy Zero has 140. 5-hour energy drink reaches your 200 milligrams. Please, nobody drink this either. Just don't, I don't recommend that. There's so much crap in it, you don't even know. Starbucks spikes up their caffeine intake. So just their small, which is a tall, has 235 milligrams. So there's over your allotedness. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but that goes over your 200 milligram limit with just that. Bang energy drink has 300. And you guys can start talking to people that you work with, because Houston, you know, he didn't really know about all this stuff with caffeine intake and all that. And he was telling me his boss would have an energy drink in the morning, he'd have one in the afternoon, and he'd have one in the evening. And that just like, I was like, are you kidding me? That's like so much caffeine. So he was drinking, let's just say it was like one of these Monster Zeros. I mean, he's having like 3 or 4 of those a day. And that's an everyday thing. Like, just imagine the impact that has. This is somebody that is wired and tired too. So we already have issues with cortisol there. So if somebody ever feels like they're wired but tired, it's very much correlated to cortisol. Maybe you should get that checked out, do blood labs, or do, I guess I'm gonna say saliva tests, urine tests to really figure that out. But most of the time, that's what we're gonna look at. And if that's cortisol related, think about how much this heightened state that person's in all the time, that they're never able to get out of that rest and relax. They're never able to get into that if they're always constantly spiked by caffeine. Energy drinks are caffeine, and these include pre-workout mixtures. Not all energy drinks are created equal. As you can see, some of these have varying caffeine content, but also the ingredients. So be mindful of the ingredients and shit you don't know on the label, or worse, if something doesn't have a label. I'm pretty sure there's somebody said the 5-hour energy, like they couldn't find a lot of like the ingredients in it. So that was just interesting. Drinking a shit ton of stimulants all the time will have an adverse effect eventually with adrenal health, thyroid function, blood pressure, etc. Energy drinks can help focus and training performance, but drinking too much will have diminishing returns. And I wanted to mention some of the ingredients that are in some of these. Nitric oxide, beta-alanine is like the ingredient in some pre-workouts or energy drinks that make you feel tingly. So if you've ever had pre-workout and you felt that tingliness, that's what that can be. Nitric oxide gives you some of that pump feeling or look where your blood vessels are dilated and you're just feeling super swole. That could be related to the nitric oxide ingredient in there. B vitamins are sometimes in these energy drinks just as, honestly, I think they're as a like promotion to like make it look healthy. They're like, oh, like these are added with like B vitamins, marketing standpoint. That's what I believe. But I mean, I guess B vitamins are good. Sure. Yeah. Taurine is in, I think the original or like the normal Monster energy drinks have taurine in it. I don't know if the Monster Zeros do, but taurine has shown benefit to like performance, such as like stamina for your performance and stuff like that. So those are inherently good ingredients, but some other stuff that you don't know, you don't really know what they are. And proprietary blends, you don't know what the hell those are. Even if they say it has this and this in it, you don't know how much of something is in that proprietary blend. They can kind of sneak in whatever. If you ever see that on a supplement, anything like that, proprietary blends are kind of like no good. You don't really know what is truly in it. Avoid drinks and foods that contain ingredients you are allergic to, obviously. And if you don't like energy drinks, don't drink them. I would say on the hierarchy of things to help you with energy drinks and 5-hour energy drinks would be like the very last thing I would like have you look into. What was I gonna say? I was gonna say something. Oh yes. Your like facial care products too sneak in caffeine in there as well. My sister had given me this like eye cream that you're supposed to put on in the mornings, and it's like for extra benefit to like really help your eyes not look like whatever. Put it on the evening. So I was sitting there, I was like, okay, like what's in this? So I looked at it and there was caffeine in it. I was like, okay, that'd be cool for like mornings. Like, I don't know how much caffeine's in there, right? Like we don't know. But for the evenings, like, why would I put this on my eyes if there's caffeine in it? And I was telling her about it. She's like, well, there's not that much in there. I'm like, you don't know. Like, it doesn't tell you how much is in there. So that thing could be loaded with caffeine. And maybe I'm putting this on my eyes every night thinking it's helping my, like, bags. But yet, like, my bags get worse and worse. And I need to rely on that more because I'm not getting good sleep because of this damn cream. Conspiracy? I don't know. But that does make sense, right? All right, so all this leading into people think that caffeine can be relating to their adrenal fatigue. And this is what adrenal fatigue feels like. Fatigue, insomnia, so not able to sleep, having high sugar cravings, depression, having some caffeine dependence, dizziness when standing up quickly, maybe getting sick all the time, low sex drive, having brain fog, maybe you're awake at night and have a hard time falling asleep. So say you wake up and you just can't get back to sleep. This is what they will call adrenal fatigues, but I'm going to put these in parentheses because my point at the bottom of this that I'll get to is your adrenals don't get tired, right? It's not like your adrenals like, we're tired. It's just your brain and your body are kind of fed up with your bullshit, and that's what they will term as adrenal fatigue. But it's just kind of a popular buzzword right now, just like, oh my gosh, what's the other one I talk about? Not gut issues, but yeah, I think gut health is like another like buzzword topic people talk about. That it's just like there needs to be more information around what this actually is. Leaky gut, that's what it was. Leaky gut is a buzzword. Adrenals respond from direct result of stress. So if you want to improve your adrenals, we need to reduce some stress. If your mood, sleep, energy, or anxiety is worsening and you're not really helping any of your lifestyle factors, such as looking at your sleep, your nutrition, recovery, all that, then I think it would be best to look into caffeine and see if that is the reason for your symptoms. If you have everything else on your list checked off of possible reasons for stress, and you can't figure anything out, you're doing all the right things, you're not working out too much, you're doing good walking, like that parasympathetic state, really not a lot of stress, you don't really know what could be going wrong, maybe look into how much caffeine you're having. Maybe that is the thing. Maybe it's not that you're having it late in the evenings, but maybe just too much consumption during the day. And see if that improves your symptoms. I will say a lot of health protocols we do are minimizing caffeine intake, which is why on your check-ins, I'm asking you, how much are you drinking? If there's a lot of dependence on caffeine, are we gonna look and see if your calories are too low? Are you reaching for caffeine as a substitute for lack of energy? We get energy from food. So if you don't have a lot of food, you're going to be more inclined to have more caffeine to give you that false sensation of having energy from food. And it does impact your appetite. I didn't mention that at all in this, but caffeine can kind of turn off your appetite, make you not so hungry. So if you ever want to talk to a dieter or somebody that's dieting, if they're on a hardcore diet, they are probably loaded up on caffeine. They're having coffee all the time. I know that was me. It would get to a point where I could not even get to a workout without having caffeine. So it was multiple times a day having that, because that was my body's way of like, okay, I need energy, I'm not getting it from food because I'm not allowed, I'm going to cut. So I have to get it from caffeine, just kind of altered it. So not good. And a lot of people who, some people start their mornings, some women, they're like, oh, well, if I were to ask them, well, what do you have for breakfast? Like, well, I have a cup of coffee and then I have lunch around. I'm like, a cup of coffee is not food. It is not food, and it should not be treated as food. Like, actually eat food with your coffee. So anyways, just some healthy alternatives or, substitutes for your caffeine intake or coffee. Trying matcha over coffee. I've tried that. I don't like it. I just can't do it. Using mushroom coffee, and I forget what brand it's called, but it has less caffeine in it than like your normal coffee. I forget what the brand is. If I find it, I will send it to you guys in the WhatsApp, but it's using, mushroom coffee. Limit additives such as your creamers and your sugars. That's also another reason where coffee can kind of go south too, is just the heavy reliance on creamers and those artificial sugars. Those add in a lot of calories that most people aren't aware of either when they're going through these coffee shops and they're getting these large caramel chip mocha frap upside down drinks. I just made that up. But once you go black, you don't go back. So just get your coffee black, it's really good. Limit intake prior to 2 p.m. at the latest. Keep under 200 milligrams. Switch to decaf. And decaf actually has, I think it said 15 to 35 milligrams of caffeine. So it's not that it doesn't have any at all. It still has them in it. And you take 4 cups of decaf, you're still kind of getting a good amount of caffeine as somebody who's having a cup or 2 of regular coffee. So that is a little bit misleading. Just be mindful that decaf still has caffeine in it. Opt for organic blends, trying to get the least amount of toxins from your coffee as possible. Take coffee with meals. Again, like I mentioned earlier, coffee is not a food or a substitute for any food. Adaptogens to help offset So this is something that I've been looking into as well to just offset any of the impact that caffeine could have on my body. Truly, do I think I'm drinking too much caffeine? No, I don't. I just want to try, I'm going through this phase of trying everything I can to improve my health. And if I can't get myself to wean off of coffee, well, what can I do to help? So taking adaptogens to help manage stress that my body perceives. So these are where adaptogens are very awesome and cool, is they're natural herbs. And they basically help our body not perceive as much stress as we could be having. And I mentioned, ashwagandha is one of the most widely studied adaptogen that nearly everyone can benefit from. Tons of podcasts and articles on ashwagandha, and I could send you guys some of that too. And I just kind of like dropped in a little article over ashwagandha. But let's get down to the basics here. Understand, like, the most important part of your caffeine intake is to understand what you're currently going through. What is your like biofeedback right now? How is your nutrition? Are you eating enough calories? You are? Okay. Are you eating enough like high quality meals? You know, are you just going through fast food all the time? Like maybe that's why you're feeling shitty. Maybe it's not the caffeine intake. Maybe it's these other factors. So look into all these other factors first to really understand what's going on with you. What is your stress like I mentioned earlier? What medications are you on? This can impact a lot of the things that you're feeling as well. We talk about bowel movements. Okay, if you're only being stimulated to have bowel movements when you're drinking coffee, what are some other things that are going on? Can we look at all these other things? Toxin exposure. This is toxins from the silverware, maybe the plates that we're eating on that are plastic rather than glass. Mold exposure. I know one of my good friends is a coach as well. She is suffering from mold exposure, and her symptoms are very much linked to issues with thyroid. So we've been talking a lot back and forth of like what she's going through. And she's like, you just feel so alone because who would ever have thought it's mold exposure? Unless she like dove into her basement and saw like they've been having a lot of mold exposure there. But that's not a very common one that people experience. I would even argue that, I only mention this because I know one person on here has the copper IUD, but copper IUD is, some people, there is a percentage, and copper is still new as well, but you can also have kind of an adverse effect from the toxicity of copper. Maybe you have too much in your system, and those will look comparable to post-birth control issues as well. So just be very mindful of the things that could impact your health and how you're feeling. Training wise, are you training high intensity interval, no rest every single day? Are you training too much? Never really getting yourself into that rest and digest state, that parasympathetic, which is why I'm super huge on walking. You know, start your morning out walking rather than being super stressed out, because most of us have stressful jobs, right? A lot of us have stressful jobs. Stress is very common day to day. So we need to do the best that we can to, you know, kind of improve or influence how much we perceive as stress or how much our body perceives as stress. We might not think something is stressful, but our body does. Any inflammation is essentially a stress to our body, and that is body fat. Body fat is basically inflammation on our body. So we can be super inflammatory just from the amounts of body fat that we have. Now, that has to be obviously a little bit more body fat than most of us have. So that's not the case for everybody, but that is an issue for people as well, that they're just chronically inflamed because they have a lot of body fat. So hopefully this was beneficial in going into some of the different things, but I would say don't cut out caffeine until you've really managed a lot of other like parts of your lifestyle factors: stress, nutrition, training, medications, all that stuff that could be impacting how you're feeling. Always assess how you're feeling. That's super important. And then if you suspect it is coffee, all right, you know, go through a slight removal or like wean yourself off of it to the point where it's take it out of your body for, I don't know, a couple of days or a week, see how you feel. If symptoms subside, okay, then, I mean, that's it. And maybe you just need to monitor caffeine, how much you're taking in. Maybe it's not an everyday thing, but every once in a while, or a treat or something like that. But I will say a very common culprit to a lot of health issues of, you know, hormones that we see with women that I work with and, you know, in the coaching atmosphere with me is we look a lot at caffeine intake because it can just kind of be overboard as it's hidden in a lot of things. And if you're not managing stress well, this certainly isn't going to help. Any thoughts at all for anybody? There's 2 things in the chat. Oh, okay. Schmidt. Oh, you're talking about the deodorant. I was like, what? I had the Schmidt's kind, and I didn't like it at all. It was like sandpaper on my armpits. If anybody's wondering what I'm talking about, it's in the chat. Anybody have any questions?
Is that coffee you're talking about with the mushrooms from the Four Sigmatic brand?
Yep.
From the Model Health Show?
Yeah. That's actually where I got it from. Is I was listening to that podcast, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna give this a try. So I bought the little like packets you just like can put in hot water. And it was good. I think I still have one left, but it's just something I didn't like keep up on. So it's like I tried it once and I was like, meh. Then I went back to my old habits, but it was good.
I remember him talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Taylor, you said something on here? Oh, thank you. Anybody else? If we don't have anything to talk about with caffeine, how much do you guys think you drink a day? Go ahead and unmute yourself or put in the chat.
I drink roughly 1 to 2 cups of coffee. And I mean, mugs, but normally they're not like full all the way. So I would say 1 to 2 cups.
Yeah, here's my thing is like, a lot of the stuff you'll see on the internet, like, oh, what's an acceptable amount? They're like 1 to 2 cups. Well, what is 1 to 2 cups? Because
Right. Each mug is different in size. And
exactly.
really, the mug that I have can probably hold a cup and a half, but I don't ever fill it to the top because, and if I do, I normally just will probably have one glass, then like 1 mug full, because by the time I'm done drinking it, it's like 12 and I've warmed it up like 3 or 4 times. So
wow, so you're a sipper for sure.
yes. Well, no, sometimes I can drink it. The only problem is if I drink it too fast, I end up having to pee a lot. I don't know why, but I end up having to pee a lot, and it's just like, okay, I can't. Where we live, it's like rural, so I can, unless I'm going to stop and go pee on the side of the road, I can't like risk that.
Yeah. No, but you're absolutely right. It's a diuretic. So it is going to make you
Yes.
pee more and poop more. Oh yeah, I was going to say those, like when you're using your Keurig, which I don't use those anymore, but it has the different like cup sizes, and it's like 6 ounce, 8 ounce, and maybe even 10 ounce. So it's like, yes, all those fit in a cup. So what is truly 1 cup?
Right.
I don't like that.
I know I'll take my K cup of my Keurig and I'll brew it through 1 time, and then I'll re-brew the same K cup again to get more out of it.
Oh, wait, you take that same pod and...
Yeah, I use the same one because it still brews flavor, and it's still like is dark, but it's just not as heavy as like the first brew. So then I mix them all into like a big Yeti or something, and I just have.
Oh, okay. That's interesting because I never did that because I'm like, oh, like it's gonna be light and like not coffee tasting, so I've never done that. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, and I don't know if you guys know too, like the type of roast in your coffee depend on like change with caffeine content. So the lighter roast have more caffeine, darker roast has least amount of caffeine. Some people don't know that, so just was gonna throw that out there. Oh, also those Zevia drinks that I talk about, that I drink sometimes, there's caffeine ones. So if you are drinking those, like be mindful that there's caffeine in some of those. And then they do say caffeine free on ones that don't have it. But that is something too that I just didn't think about. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have this with my dinner. And then I saw that had caffeine in it. I was like, sucks. But the root beer one is good. I don't think it has caffeine in it. So right there.
I just remembered something that I do take actually.
Yeah.
It's Noon tablets. Are you familiar with those?
No, but I will look them
The
up. Noon?
N-U-U-N. Here, I can turn it on. 1 second.
Can you spell it? Noom tablets?
Noon.
Look it up. Oh. Wait. Vitamins and caffeine?
Yeah. The energy one,
Yeah. That's what it says.
like electrolytes and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Wonder how much is in one tablet. I'm looking that up.
40 milligrams.
40? Okay. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, 40. One tablet, 40 milligrams. There you go. On top of your couple cups.
Yeah.
Couple cups. Actually, it sounds like you just
Yeah.
have like one cup.
Yeah. It's a good size.
No, I have some of the girls on here, like Kim. She's not on here tonight, but she'll put in her check-in that she has just like one cup on the weekends. Like she doesn't have it all throughout the week. She's like, I just have my weekend cup of coffee. I'm like, oh, like I wish that was like me, where I just like, oh, just my weekend one. Like, no, mine's an everyday thing. So I really do want to try to like get off of it. Because if I can't even imagine like one day without it, I'm like, that's bad. Like that's an addiction. Anything else from anybody? Questions? Okay. Well, if nobody has any other questions, this will be shared in the Google file. And again, if you guys want any recommendations on these books that I use to kind of talk about most of these topics, just go ahead and reach out to me and I'll drop them in WhatsApp and share them with you. But we just stuck in here. Have a good night, everybody.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Jubilee.
Want to say hi to somebody?
Yeah. Ah, little bee, you're sitting up and your helmet's off.